Hello, thank you for joining me here at Bert's Books. This is going to be another of those unscripted, hopefully slightly quick ones. Let's see how I do. Now, I hadn't realised because the last time I'd been down to the South Bank in search of second-hand books, for some reason, and I forget quite how long ago this was, but that usual, that market under the bridge near the South Bank Centre, that wasn't there the previous time I'd been along to check. So I was happy to find a couple of weeks ago that it was back on. Those booksellers were back there in the usual place, which was an encouraging sign. However, on this occasion, I don't know, have you ever found yourself, confronted with some really trashy temptation when you're in polite company? Or in other words, you're in the presence of someone you have an interest in maintaining a good impression with. Well, this was the case this time around, and so I had this dilemma of being confronted, sort of some tempting trash, but sort of having to balance that with I don't want this person to think I'm that trashy. So, I don't know, I just kind of had to give it a bit of a look, I know it's wrong kind of thing. This it gave me flashbacks to, some years ago now. I was out having a meal with someone else who I'm no longer particularly in contact with, and I touched upon one of my nerdier interest areas, and she said to me, "Have you had many long-term relationships, Bert?" The cheek of that. So yeah, that certainly didn't turn into one. And yeah, we aren't really in touch anymore. But anyway, I was in the company of somebody else couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I did, I couldn't really turn these down. I'll show you what they are in a second. They were less than a fiver each, but at the same time, I'm just gonna have to let I've got some really trashy tastes, and I don't think I've alienated her quite yet, but all right, let's just get to what these are, shall we? Now, you might say life's too short, but Leo Kessler style, and even by my yardstick, these are, as Warburg let go, these are, no, not the gold standard, I would say. But anyway, so what did I find? Well, I could have done worse. There were, I limited myself to two. First of which, I'd never seen this one or heard of this one before. Hellfire. Why do these books always have these names like they're heavy metal albums? So this one, okay, what is that guy wearing there? What's he wearing? What's that on his head? Because he's not a pilot, and I don't believe the German military went in for protective headgear for tankers. That doesn't look particularly protective in any case. I'm guessing there's a bit of artistic license going on. The cover is, and sorry, yeah, there are. If we're going to sort of squint at the collar tabs, there are some symbols there. Just don't zoom in too close. Yeah, the cover's slightly deceptive now. Now this, it turns out to be, I thought that the Wotan series, which I have touched on in here before, I thought they ended with the one where Doddenberg kind of sort of retreats into the sunset, I think, at the end of Hammer of the Gods. You see what I mean about heavy metal album titles? Anyway, and then Schultz disappears into the ether, or at least into one of those rat run escape routes or whatever it is at the end of Blood and Ice, which I think deals with the that sort of Hungarian operation, sort of March of 1945. You wouldn't have thought there'd be any mileage left, but yeah, he managed to squeeze another Wotan one out. Now this one, yeah, the cover's deceptive, because what you don't get in here, at least as far as I've read of it, is the war's over by this point. This concerns, I think he's supposed to be like the final commander of Wotan, Colonel Schirmer. I don't remember him from earlier books. I might be wrong there, but this one, actually, the way this one starts, Kessler reverts to an old kind of device, which I think in his first book of this, sort of the conceit that this is serious war, war history, that this is, based on somebody's actual account. So there's this opening chapter or opening kind of passage, which purports to be Kessler interviewing this kind of irascible, now, into his 60s and failing health, Colonel Schirmer, sort of ranting away in a sort of angry militaristic way about how he never retreated and blah blah. He also calls, right, this includes language that maybe I shouldn't actually word for word repeat, but he refers to as, hang on, let me get to this. He refers to in Rommel as the so-called desert fox. I'd call him. I lost us in Africa and blah blah. Yeah. Anyway, it's I've got to say it's not terribly convincing, but Kessler, or should I say Whiting, goes along with it. And so that this old Colonel Schirmer rants away about how he never once retreated, and then the sort of opening chapter of the book proper describes him retreating from his last encounter. They blow off their last Panzerfaust, and then that's it. They hop it into the bushes, and then it's from there to. So yeah, he does retreat there. So, but anyway, easy for me to poke fun at fictional wartime figures. So yeah, this one, I suppose it sort of takes a bit of a leaf out of. Oh, there was one, I think it was a New English Library title possibly, and it concerned itself with former members of the organisation depicted, the uniform of which is depicted here, after the end of the Second World War, getting into the mercenary type of activities, namely with the Foreign Legion, and this one kind of goes that way in a nutshell. I haven't finished it yet. I mean, it's interesting to see Whiting, aka Kessler, just squeeze another one out of the Wotan franchise, if you like, when it's from. You wouldn't have thought there's any mileage left in it, but he somehow manages another book. Someone's made an effort with that cover art. However, historically confusing it is. Anyway, if only that were it, but oh no. And again, Kessler, this was a separate series, and I've never read, this is still in its, that sort of wrapping you get from those stalls. I've never yet read an Otto Stahl. I don't know how many he got out of this. I don't think it was the sort of success that the Wotan series was, and I would assume this to be a little bit more of a like a sexploitation. I imagine it's just from the packaging and the back cover blurb, as best I can make it out through that packaging, that it's a sort of rather, not that the Wotan ones weren't kind of slightly smutty, but actually very smutty, but I'm guessing they sort of amplify the, there's a sort of scantily dressed Fräulein or a Madame or whatever depicted on the cover there. I'm guessing this is a sort of bed-hopping, occupied Europe sort of thing, but I don't know. I mean, it's, again, sort of someone's put a bit of time in on the cover. I mean, there's Otto Stahl there, sporting those kind of long at the sides bits that 60s and 70s actors tended to have, and men in the 1940s generally didn't, as far as I can make out. But also he's got one of those greyhound faces there. But anyway, I'm guessing he's the studly figure who romps through the boudoirs of occupied Europe even while the house burns down. So yeah, I think this was kind of probably quite late in the day from Kessler's run of success. I don't have high hopes for what I'm going to get taken out of his packaging, but yeah, sometimes you can't stop yourself, can you? Well, that's right in front of me for an affordable price. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, I don't think I've blown it. Anyway, thank you for indulging this unusual and probably unwanted insight into my personal matters, but we will catch up soonish, I'm sure. Thanks again. Cheers.